and you take care of it. And same idea with businesses. There are models that can be done where profit is to be made, but it also does not negatively impact communities in such a way that it leaves them impoverished and leaves the land impoverished, and creates a classist system that unfortunately we have seen far too often.
Again, very difficult to add to that, but in the UK, you're probably aware, in the UK, one of the things that's been pushed through, and he's active, is with developers, again, a loaded term, developers building. One of the things that has to be submitted as part of the application to take over the land and develop it, are we developing it for the better? We're just turning it into housing. What's being removed? They have to submit biodiversity benefit statements. So how is the development of the housing going to improve local biodiversity? And I only became aware of this explicitly maybe 6 weeks ago, when a woodland just up the road from where I live in southeast London, it was made aware to the residents of the area that there's going to be an impact by the refurbishment of an old building. It's been turned into a care home, so that in and of itself has a benefit, obviously, to those who need that care. But there are lots of very well-established trees, native species, associated biodiversity. There's a certain amount of taking that has to happen for this development to go ahead. But as part of the application to the local authority, the plan discusses the planting and the effectively the rewilding in some cases, and improvement, enhancement of biodiversity. I'd never come across that before. So I think my point is that there needs to be a greater awareness of the fact that yes, we can and have to, as you say, we have to work with businesses. We have to. There's just no way not to. But let's have a greater awareness. Let's have a greater conversation. Let's have an understanding of what the impacts of the business that you're partnering with actually is. And of course, organisations like the Natural History Museum, we're a charity, but we also have due diligence. Whenever we enter into a corporate partnership with someone, we look into their background in fine detail, because you have to be aware of just who it is you're partnering with. I don't think the two should be mutually exclusive. There's obviously benefits on both sides, but it's the nature of the modern world, isn't it? It's just the way it is. We can't be fighting with each other all the time, but we need to be aware of what the agendas are, let's say.
I just wanted to add as well that I think there's been a lot of youth advisory boards now, and a lot of, or youth climate advisory boards for businesses, mostly for their foundations, sometimes for the actual business. But I think they should really elevate that and not just have young voices, but also scientists, that they're not employed by them, because, and then I think that there needs to be real and honest conversations about how we can go about ensuring, again, as Rachel said earlier, prioritizing people and planet over profit. I've seen a lot of small businesses, and there's one in the US in Colorado, I think, named, I don't remember what they're called, but they're basically a farm that also does their shipping, that also does their food waste, and also their rubbish collection. And they're a collective, they're a collective of different businesses, and then because they're doing it all together and not one by one, and because they're trying to support each other in that way, in that community way, then they're all able to survive and also still profit, as a business. I think those initiatives and those models are really cool and really need to be supported even more, because often those kinds of models are also the ones that are being threatened more by the government or by other multinational businesses that are bigger and larger, because again, it threatens their power. I think it's also really important that activists and advocates who have a more critical view on profit don't shy away from talking about it and talking to businesses, because then you end up with people who won't tell them what they really need to do. And so that's something that's also a challenge, because I know it's really difficult. I know you'd rather not talk to the people who don't see the importance of the planet, but sometimes you do need to have these hard conversations with them. And make sure also that tricky thing that you're not being greenwashed in the process or youth washed. But if you have like really real, genuine, almost like not broadcasted conversations, and that can be a start. Do we have more questions? Okay, and this will be our last question. Thank you.
What do you think about book bans?
Book bans?
Yeah, when they ban books, certain books.
I think that book bans are, I mean, regardless of where you are in the world, it's a problem. Freedom to information should always be at the key, and perhaps a little different than our topic here, but I think that ultimately we all deserve to have the right to know what is going on in the world. And if that's books, I mean, in Canada, I remember under previous leadership, they were banning actually scientists from coming forward on certain environmental topics. And that science was being hidden and actually burnt, which was pretty wild. And there's conversations around that to be had with what information is being hidden from the public.
I'm a great believer in freedom of speech and access to information. I don't agree with censorship. That's my personal opinion. It's not an institutional opinion, but nonetheless, you know, I don't know if it is a little bit kind of off topic for us, but is there a reason why you've asked us that question?
Yes, there is, because you're all storytellers, principals, climate activists, and kids' right to know. So when we think about all of those subjects, it makes me think, okay, well, they're all teachers. What do they think about banning these books? Don't the kids, like she was saying, scientist books? And you look at what Hitler did. He burned a lot of books. There's a lot of information that we don't have now because of that. So that's why I was questioning it. And so thank you for answering it. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier in the beginning, where access to information is so crucial and important, and how even if you are in an educational system that's not banning books, a lot of the books that they need to be reading and information that they need to be reading aren't on the curriculum. So it might not be banned, but it's also not being provided and given, and there's no access to it still. And so it all goes back to that. If you do not know that there's something wrong, if you do not know that there's something you can do, then it's a lot harder for you to actually do something. But still recognizing that there's only so much that educational institutions can do, so it's a challenge for all of us to go outside of these educational institutions and go to the land, go to the people who are working on the land and learn from them, because there's so much to learn from that knowledge. And so that's so crucial and important. And if you look at and think of book bans, I might be wrong, I'm really bad at history, but wasn't there a time when they were burning the books because scientists said that the universe didn't revolve around the earth but around the sun? That's true, right? Like they burned books because of that. And so in every generation, again, they will silence the people who are trying to change the status quo, the people in power, etc. And so we have to keep pushing, and we have to keep using our voices to restore our relationship with nature. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, we have to go to the front for a photo. I said that really loudly. I'm sorry, guys.
And if you guys want to hear more about the beauty of oceans, stick around because in a few minutes we will be having Bodhi, who is a United Nations recognized award winning Gen Z ocean climate solutionist dedicated to improving ocean health and human health, which are deeply interconnected. And I love the ocean, so we should all stick around.
Test, test. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. We're going to start in just a few moments, so please stay with us and take a seat. We've got an amazing storyteller coming up.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mitzi Jonal Tan, a full-time climate justice activist from the Philippines. And to everyone who can hear my voice, I'm inviting you to come over and listen to a very, very interesting story that we have. One of our storytellers today is Bodhi Patil, an ocean climate solutionist. And now, if you don't know what that means, it's the perfect opportunity for you to come over and hear all about how this award-winning Gen Z ocean climate solutionist is dedicated to improving ocean health and human health, which are deeply interconnected. So if that's something that you want to learn about more, come over and listen to Bodhi. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. This is one of my longtime heroes in the climate justice space, so thank you, Mitzi. I've been actually following her work. I'm 21 years old right now, but when I was about 18, getting more into the climate justice space, I was literally watching her videos all the time, so it's cool to grow and get to work with your heroes. And also got to meet Miss Canada tonight, Miss Turtle Island, so that's really rad, so shout out right over here. The first Métis Miss Canada, so Indigenous representation all the way. I'm gonna get right into it. So, my name is Bodhi Patil. I'm an ocean climate solutionist. That means I work at the nexus between the ocean and climate. The ocean is the one entity that truly has the superpowers to reverse the climate crisis. And when we learn from traditional ways of stewardship, we can help do that. So I'm here with a delegation of 13 indigenous leaders from all around the world. I'm talking literally every single continent besides Antarctica. And we're representing the world's view in terms of what indigenous leaders and what traditional elders are pushing for. We have one of our Aboriginal elders right here, Wodonga from Australia. And it's been really powerful. Let's give it up for all of our indigenous leaders. Let's go. I know it's been a long day for everyone. There's been all sorts of things that we've been doing, so the whole point of this evening and this short presentation and overview is to really get the energy up and understand exactly why the ocean has the superpowers, why indigenous stewards are key to this mission to revitalizing the health of the ocean, and what role we all have to play in protecting the health of the ocean, because the ocean is what everyone depends on for survival. So with no further ado, let's get right into it. So I want us to all start with a big, deep breath. So go ahead, put your phones down. Even if you're recording, that's fine. Let's have a break for our phones for 30 seconds. Go ahead and put your hands on your lap. Put your feet grounded nice and steadily on the ground. Stand up if you feel more comfortable. I want you to take a big, deep inhale. And inhale your favorite color, that energy of your favorite color whenever you see it. For me, it's light blue, like the crystal blue water of the ocean. So breathe in. And breathe out everything you don't need, all the chaos of COP. And let's breathe in this time your favorite sea creature. So pretend your favorite sea creature is a dolphin, those playful, energetic creatures. Breathe that energy in. And breathe everything you don't need out. Let's do one more. I think we really need it. This time you can go ahead and on the exhale or wherever you need to feel more calm and grounded. Big, deep inhale, and exhale. Go ahead and shake it out. Feel free to open your eyes. So, we do, in fact, live on a beautiful blue planet. The ocean covers 70% of this Earth. In fact, it's like we're all islanders. We're living on 30% of continental landmass, surrounded in the Great Blue Ocean. Te moana nui akiba. And when we look to the Great Blue Ocean that connects us all for answers, we can really help to solve some of the climate's greatest challenges. This is a pretty startling image. This is what the Earth looks like without any water. When people say water is life, they say it for a very important reason. It's evident that water is in fact the most important entity for our survival, for the health of the biosphere, for the health of all of biodiversity, both human and non-human, living and non-living, that depends on water. So in so many cultures, and ocean cultures and water cultures and cultures connected to rivers, streams, lakes, mountains, we understand that water is life. So if you're going to leave home today or leave COP with one message, make sure that you carry that water that's literally flowing through your cells. Our bodies are about 60 to 70% water, depending how much water you drink, so make sure to stay hydrated, especially during this time. And know that we're inextricably linked to the health of water. We're biologically, chemically, physically connected to water. And in fact, the same salinity of this beautiful blue ocean and this blue planet we are on is the same salinity as our mother's wombs. And so before we're even born, before we learn how to walk and take our first steps on this planet, we're actually learning how to swim. So for the folks that maybe aren't into swimming or haven't remembered, remember those first days before you even conceived of, and right when you were in your mother's womb being taught how to swim in that incredible ecosystem. So remember that we're all connected to the water. So I wanted to share a little bit about my story today and why the heck you should be listening to me or caring. Water has saved my life in many ways. I moved all around as a kid. I lived in Jakarta, Indonesia, where I fell in love with the ocean in Bali. I lived in Doha, Qatar. I lived across the east coast and west coast of Turtle Island and this beautiful, great North American continent that has a lot to teach us around traditional stewardship. And I really realized as a kid, when I moved back to Washington, D.C., where I spent middle school and high school, that I was disconnected. I felt like a tree that had been ripped out and replanted, or a little mangrove propagule that was yet to reach its incredible salt marsh that it needed to grow in. And as that tree without roots, I felt a lot of anxiety. In fact, 7 in 10 young people suffer from climate anxiety. And as a 6th grader, as a 10-year-old, I also too felt that strongly in my heart. And that led to a lot of depression. However, water was the thing that saved my life. It saved me in so many ways, and I know it can be the one thing that heals us all. So today is really getting a bit more into a topic that you might have never heard of, never thought of. In fact, the ocean almost never gets representation within the COP dialogues. And this is only the 2nd year out of 28 COPs where the ocean is a thematic area that's being prioritized on the agenda. And still, it's not enough. So we need ocean warriors like all of you here to stand up for the voice of the ocean. So today we're going to be covering creative ways to leverage intergenerational collaboration, young people with our creativity, visions, and ideas, with the expertise, mentorship, and finance of adults to leverage investment for ocean and climate solutions. And we're going to break that down. I'll start with a little bit of an overview of how I created Inner Light, which is an organization focused on climate mental health and well-being. As that little 6th grade kid, I was so lost in the world. I was disconnected, like a tree without roots. You can kind of visualize that if you close your eyes, and I'm sure many of you felt that sort of anxiety from the climate crisis. And that kind of compounded over time. And I realized other young people, they didn't have the tools to deal with this. How are you supposed to know how to deal with climate anxiety when in your culture or in your fast-paced home, all you're given to cope with is a piece of technology or TikTok or a phone, and that's supposed to be your coping mechanism? When we're so disconnected from nature, it's hard to find that reconnection. And the thing, again, that saved me was water and coming back to the water. And so when I founded Inner Light in 7th grade, after realizing that other youth needed these tools, the same tools that helped me get over depression, that helped me get over suicidal thoughts even, we would need to make sure that this just transition towards climate mental health and mental health tools and equity was ensured, especially as it relates to water in the ocean. And that is a key pillar of my journey, and that representation of the health of the ocean, my story, drives everything I do. And I'm going to share a bit about me, just keeping the ego aside, removing all of that, and sharing a little bit of my story and why this matters in the global context of ocean solutions and what we can all do to leverage this change. So after founding Inner Light, I co-created an organization under Parlay for the Oceans, which is a creative ocean climate action network focused on the intersection of art, design, music, culture, and the voice of the ocean, called Ocean Uprise. And go ahead and raise your hand if you see anything weird in this photo. Conrad. Okay, marine debris, yeah, that's obviously weird. We need to reduce marine debris. In fact, we need to stop marine plastic at the source, which is petroleum. Because anyone else mention something they might see that's weird? 10 points. Mona. A shoe, okay, that's pretty weird. These shoes are actually made from ocean plastic, and they're made from gill nets. About 90% of marine-bound plastic pollution, and marine plastic pollution is from ghost fishing gear that's found in the ocean, which wreaks havoc on the marine ecosystem. Let's try another guess. Boom, Isaiah. A tire, okay. So everyone's shouting out the obvious. Does anyone spot the black Pomeranian being held up by my friend in the back over there? Yeah, that's our climate spirit dog. So Ocean Uprise was all about leveraging community, leveraging the fun, the energy of young people to drive ocean action. We started with things that were very simple, beach cleanups and advocacy, and expanded much beyond that. And now Ocean Uprise is a community that was just started with $0. In fact, our first investment was only $5,000, and it's grown to a community of over 40 practitioners, 5,000 youth practitioners in 40 countries, and we have over 180 alumni now. And that all started out of a love and need to protect the ocean and the need for young voices to be represented within this space. This is only a drop in the bucket, and there's so many organizations growing. Another really important piece around youth engagement and advocacy of the ocean is connecting to other solutions. And so a couple years ago, after founding Ocean Uprise, I pitched to a couple climate organizations, hey, why don't you have youth climate advisory boards? Or hey, why don't you have a climate advisory board that has a young person, a person of color, an indigenous person, a representative of the issues you're trying to solve on it? Doesn't this seem a little bit strange? And they're like Symbrosia Seaweeds, who uses seaweed to reduce methane emissions by over 85%, led by a Turkish-American, incredible young female innovator, said, hey, let's start a new industry standard. Let's have a youth climate advisory board or an advisor that's a young person at every single climate company, every single climate tech startup, every single climate organization. So that's exactly what we're here to pioneer. And when it comes down to youth advocacy and the connection to the ocean, one of the most effective tactics is having a young person on your advisory board. So if you're a decision maker or if you communicate with decision makers, basically all of you here, that's why you're at COP, please make sure to advocate for this as well, because we need multiple champions. It can't just be a one-man mission, and it's not, and that's why I'm grateful to have so many friends in the audience, so many friends at COP that are actively advocating for youth on advisory boards. So I know this is a bit of a wild journey, and we're kind of covering a lot, because in 15 minutes, what the time I got, people keep me posted on time because I will keep going. We wanted to cover a lot of things. And so the blue economy is really critical to this journey and this mission, and a lot of people don't know about it. Raise your hand if you've heard the term blue economy before. Okay, so I would say like 39% of you. Just kidding, I don't know how to do that math that quick. So the blue economy basically means a sustainable ocean economy. The blue economy is a space where maritime resources, fisheries, mangroves, different sources of aquaculture are being used in a way that can be regenerated over time. Unfortunately, currently we don't have a sustainable blue economy. The ocean is suffering for so many reasons, from marine plastic pollution to overfishing to extreme heat. The ocean is really taking a toll. And that's the importance of young people stepping up for the voice of the ocean, to leverage our relations as youth, to leverage our platforms as youth, to make sure we're able to build regenerative blue economies. The blue economy is also the fastest growing economy on the planet. Yes, you heard me. Go ahead and look it up. the blue economy by statistical measures is one of the fastest growing economies on the planet. And that's why we need to focus on regenerating the health of our ocean if we're gonna meet the just transition, if we're gonna meet a 1.5 degree future, if we're gonna phase out fossil fuels, the blue economy is critical. I'll give you one more stat. 90% of everything you see around here today was shipped across the ocean. The ocean connects us all. It's the reason why we have our products that we're literally physically on right now, where your butts are sitting in your chairs or the turf that you're standing on. That is not real glass. It's really important to understand that the ocean really connects us all and builds up this healthy situation where we can truly regenerate her. So that's what we're gonna uncover today. So in terms of global movements, there's some really key characteristics happening within the blue economy. There's blue natural capital. Raise your hand if you've heard of blue natural capital, blue carbon, or anything like that. What? Okay, so 5 people, wow. So blue natural capital is basically anything in the ocean that is able to produce a carbon sequestrating value or has an ecosystem service or has cultural provisions that it provides. So you can think of things like mangroves. Some people don't like to because they're smelly, but I think they're the really unsung heroes of the climate. You can think of things like seagrass, salt marshes, kelp forests, and other estuarine environments that are critical. Blue natural capital is also worth multi-trillions of dollars. However, right now, it's not being accounted for, it's not being evaluated, and it's not being cared for by its traditional habitants and by the governments that make sure blue natural capital or blue carbon ecosystems are thriving. We're on this mission to protect 30 by 30. Raise your hand if you've heard of the 30 by 30 campaign. I hope to see everyone's hand raised. All right, that's way more of you. So protecting 30% of the ocean and 30% of land by 2030 is really imperative in this vision as well. I'm gonna keep it moving because I still have a lot more to cover. I'm gonna go quick. Someone please do keep me posted on time. Climate, mental health, and well-being, connecting back to that story of light, of connection, of how we all lose connection a lot of the time, of how Gen Z, my generation, is actually suffering from a disconnection crisis, where we're not connecting to the spaces our ancestors have stewarded, where we're not connecting to the places that are helping our planet survive. We need to reinvent this connection and make sure that technology can facilitate stronger intergenerational connections and our connection to our own health and well-being through nature. So now I'm gonna touch on a little bit about how the blue economy and how those thematic areas have actually covered and created a career. And this career path that I've personally been able to develop has been because of mentorship. So for every young person and for every adult in this audience, please engage in 360-degree mentorship. You are a mentor and a mentee, and you have to listen to that, especially global CEOs. And we often challenge them within our UN negotiations and meeting spaces that all these CEOs should be learning from young people as well. And that's that relation that a lot of First Nations, traditional Indigenous communities will share. We learn and respect from our elders, and we're also able to share knowledge in meaningful ways. So 3 quick things that I'm going to touch on very briefly. And this, again, this career path is being completely developed from scratch, from mentorship, from support, from the advocacy and mentorship of elders, from my own ancestors and channeling what they have been doing in terms of their cultural connections and their connection to the ocean and water. And it's been 3 pillars. Educating through storytelling. I think education for the next generation is critical if we want to reach our climate goals. Especially learning from our elders and passing down the wisdom from our elders. This is a quick story about how we were able to declare a deep seabed mining moratorium in Canada. Deep sea mining is an emerging field that hasn't actually started yet, and we have the potential to stop this really incredible threat to the ocean and the health of the ocean before it even begins. So if you don't know about deep sea mining, I encourage you to find me later and ask a bit more. And we need to make sure we stop this. So with Indigenous leaders from all around the world, in my backyard in Vancouver, British Columbia, we were able to stop Canada 5 days after this protest and this event with the global capital of a deep seabed mining organization. I'm not going to go into details. It might bore you. To me, it's like the coolest thing ever that we're able to change policy on an international and national level. And that's what we were able to do in terms of deep seabed mining. And then there's also sharing and advocating with our elders and with people in decision-making spaces. You might know this guy. He's pretty cool. Yeah, Moana over here does. She's actually a 7-year-old and the youngest member of our Indigenous Wisdom Keepers delegation. Want to give everyone a wave? Woo-hoo! And so channeling what we're able to do intergenerationally and making sure that now the UN Secretary General has a youth advisory group, that many of us are here friends with the youth that are part of it, making sure we're sharing knowledge and leaders in power are listening, truly listening. It's beyond a seat at the table, it's moving to joint decision making. just keeping this expedited, because I made this presentation on the Metro this morning to make sure that it would fit the needs. Inspiring action. I think it's really important that we all learn how to inspire action. How are we mobilizers for change? And so a really quick thing, what we were able to do in multiple conferences and events, again with this deep seabed mining moratorium, was to push for a global campaign. A campaign that actually led to countries all around the world, now 29 to be precise, to declare a moratorium on seabed mining, to protect our common heritage site, which is the ocean. Does anyone know anything about the deep sea and its power and connection? Do you think the deep sea is important? Raise your hand. All right, okay, so everyone thinks the deep sea is important. God, great, that was a leading question. The deep sea is it's our ancestor. In fact, all of life emerged from the deep sea. The coral polyp, or PO, the polyp of a coral, which is basically what the coral is able to feed on. I won't go into corals either. That's another story. That's what I'm obsessed with and in love with as well. Emerged from the deep sea, and as this polyp emerged from the deep sea, it created all life on the planet. So our deep sea is our common heritage site, and connecting it back to this moratorium. In order to protect and preserve the future of our planet, of our blue planet that we all know we are living on and all a part of, and depending on for oxygen for life, we need to make sure we stop these highly extractive and polluting industries underwater that oftentimes don't get the attention they deserve. So with indigenous leaders and leaders across government and the planet, we helped to stop this. And that was all youth-led, all community organized, all led by universities and students. That is the power of organizing. This is boring, so I'm not going to touch on it right now. But basically, we have to stem the tide of pollution upstream, and that also incorporates the Malka to Makai approach, which is mountains to ocean approach in terms of management. And the third thing is accelerating impact, both with multilateral, multi-governmental IGOs, NGOs, academic institutions, climate investment companies, firms, and different protocols around indigenous stewardship that are represented within the COP space. And I just wanted to share a little story about another important concept. Has anyone heard of the High Seas Treaty? Woohoo! All right, so about 28.5% of you. Quick polling. So basically, the High Seas Treaty is a treaty to protect biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction. And it's a BB&J treaty. So what that means is the high seas is all the area beyond a country's EEZ. So sometimes a country has about 200 nautical miles circumference around its island or off its coast that it's under its jurisdiction within the ocean. But the BB&J is all about the areas that are global commons. No one owns the high seas, the areas so remote and so hard to get to that only some of us have gotten to experience in our lifetimes. And so we need to protect it. However, the high seas have been pretty much plundered for all of my lifetime. We've seen fish stocks deplete. We've seen changes in marine chemistry and marine environments. And so advocating for the protection of the high seas has been imperative. And so what we were able to do, thousands of young people, which culminated in a 6-minute talk in front of 150 leaders from all around the world, was advocating for a high seas treaty, advocating for countries around the world, government leaders, organizations, and industry to call on the protection of the high seas, which has taken 21 years, my entire lifetime, to write a treaty. And so during that talk, I encouraged world leaders to really expedite the process at which they operate. And now youth organizations like Sustainable Ocean Alliance, Earth Echo, Ocean Uprise, and hundreds of others are helping to accelerate this process as well. 2 days after that, no, actually, the morning after, the UN, declared a high seas treaty open for signatories. And that day, over 80 countries signed on to the high seas treaty. Now there are 89 countries that signed on. I'm not saying youth advocacy was the reason why the high seas treaty was created, but it sure as heck expedites these processes that normally are on geological epoch timescales that we need to change, because the dinosaurs that are in power now need to get their butts in gear, to put it lightly. So really wrapping up here and focusing on the power of intergenerational collaboration, long-term sustainability really looks like 100-year plans. When we look to Maori elders, Maori people, like Sister Fire here, we can understand from their culture that they actually have planned for 100 years of how their youth, of how over 7 generations, like a lot of First Nations communities call it in northern Canada, where I get to spend and go to school and learn from, is really important. And in the Maori culture, they create basically a plan with a waka, which is a canoe, and in each canoe pillar, there are 5 pillars, it's 20 years, and that's basically one generation, so it's kind of 5 generations. Don't mind the exact timings of the generation. And within that canoe, when everything's working in line and everything's working together, they're able to sail together, able to sail as one. And today, during the UAE UN COP presidency briefing and during a negotiation we had, I asked the COP presidency, along with other youth leaders from Yemen, Sudan, and the Global South, to create a $10 million climate justice fund that looked at the next 100 years of the needs of young people. $10 million is not nearly enough to fill the gap between youth equity and climate justice finance. However, it's a step in the right direction. And what we need now is wins. In fact, every little win adds to one of those pillars of the planks that can help us build this incredible vessel to sail forwards together. I want to recognize here the importance of Polynesian voyaging and how this connects all of the threads. Polynesian voyaging or wayfinding is ways Polynesian peoples in Hawaii and across the Pacific Triangle, or the Polynesian Triangle, have moved from island to island, connecting cultures, connecting ancestry. To me, it gives me shivers every time I think about this. Only by using the stars as a map, they're able to navigate, sharing culture, sharing different types of food, sharing language, sharing ways in which they protected the ocean, sharing ways in which they understood the importance of whales as kapuna, as ancestors, sharing the importance of migrating routes, creating marine protected areas and Rahui style of management, creating the Maukadamokai or ridge to reef ecosystem approach of conservation, rewilding, protecting native species, transferring knowledge, and protecting native language, which is cultural heritage. And on these vessels, for 100 years of planning, built by all sorts of different types of native woods and proliferating native woods and reducing invasive species. We won't get to that. I was told I have 2 more minutes. Is how we're able to sail forwards together. So a really, really key message here is when we're able to work across generations, when we're able to work across different groups, when we're able to transcend our own thoughts about cultural homogenization and who people are based on where they come from or what they look like, we can sail together for a healthier, more just, more ocean regenerative world where young people and people of color and indigenous leaders who traditionally haven't had the power at these multilateral conferences are able to really pull on those levers of change. That's exactly what we need for a healthy future. This is my information. This was awesome to be able to share a little bit more about my work and story, but most importantly, how the ocean story and this Voyager story is a story that lies within every single one of our hearts. As I said earlier, we're all islanders. We all live on tiny little masses of land within a huge ocean. And when we remember our own heritage, when we channel the wisdom of our ancestors and elders, then we can truly create a regenerative future. The health of the ocean is important here, and especially the health of stewards that have protected Moana forever. Thank you very much for the time and space. And we're all ocean warriors, and we all have to be ocean warriors. The ocean depends on this. So if that's a one take-home message, water is life. Thank you all so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Bodhi, for such an inspiring presentation. My name is Kasia Sequoia Slavner. I'm a documentary filmmaker, and I just wanted to encourage you all to come and sit in for our next session. We're going to be screening a film called Bigger Than Us, and I'll be moderating a conversation with Malati, the amazing filmmaker behind the film, just afterwards. So stay tuned for 6 o'clock. Hope to see you all here.